I was like, will you just get together? You're driving me crazy. Hello, welcome to Sound of Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a tag created by Eric at Break Even Books. I've included a link to his video in my description, and that is the Loki Book Tag. So I was going to do the inner out book tag instead, but you know, I was tagged specifically to do this one, so I figured I would do it early. So I'm going to talk about different books this time. A lot of my favorites do fit into these tags, but you know, I talk about Gideon the Ninth and Tiny Huff and all these other ones a lot, so I've decided to branch into some other, you know, lesser traveled books in my collection. Ones that I probably haven't mentioned before. So hopefully this is interesting. If not, whatever, I'll just go back to talking about Gideon the Ninth. So the first question is Mischief, a book with a mischievous character. So the book I'm deciding to talk about this time is Heroes of the Frontier by Dave Eggers. It's a beautiful cover. So this book actually isn't like my favorite book of all time. It's pretty good. You know, I liked it. I didn't love it. But there's a little girl in this book who is very, very funny. She's definitely mischievous. There are a few parts where something that she did or said just made me laugh out loud quite a bit. He did a really good job of capturing kind of what a toddler on the verge of being a little girl is actually like, and it was really quite amusing. I really like stories about Alaska, and I love the stories about road trips, so that's why I bought this book. Also, I've read a whole bunch of Dave Eggers books. The first book I ever read of his was You Shall Know Our Velocity, which I read when I was about 18 or 19, and since then I've read a lot of his books, probably most of them. I really liked his How Are You Hungry, small, like, kind of short story collection. There's also one, I think he wrote The Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius. That one was interesting because it was more of a memoir. And then I've liked all of the other ones I've read except for Hologram for the King, which I found extremely boring. Yeah, so anyway, Heroes of the Frontier. If you like Alaska books, maybe check that out. Question 2, Variant 1, show a book you have more than one version of. So I was like, I don't have any of these. And then I realized that I do. I have two. So I actually have two versions of The Odyssey. I have the Robert Fagles version, which is like the usual one. It's the Penguin one. And then I also have the Emily Wilson translation, which came out a few years ago. And what's interesting about this one is that it's the first female translation. And apparently it's a little different because of the way that women are treated, the way that certain words are translated. So I'm really actually quite interested to read this. I just haven't gotten around to it yet because I've already read it, so I know the story, and you know, but I really hope to get to it. Hopefully this year. If not, I'm gonna make it a goal to read it early in 2022. So yeah. Also, as a little bonus, I have 2 copies of Jurassic Park, an extremely beat up one and a less beat up one. I think this one was actually my husband's, and then this one was mine because this was like my favorite book. Like, it's taped up when I was probably 12. Like, there's a, oh yeah, there's my old little writing, like my 12-year-old writing in there of my name. I adored this book and I still love it. So I'm gonna keep my beat up copy and then a backup copy, you know, in case of emergencies. Okay, question 3, Variant 2. Show a book or a book series where you have multiple book editions in the series. It took me a while to figure out what this meant, even though I watched Eric's video. Anyway, I figured it out. I have a couple of these actually, but the one that was easiest to kind of hold up, and pretty much the only YA book that I own, and that is the His Dark Materials trilogy. So I have these 2 really cool, funky hardcovers, these deluxe edition 10th anniversary ones. And then I have this really boring regular cover for the first book. So yeah, I really like this series. I haven't read it in a long time, since probably it first came out. But when my daughter's a little older, I'll let her check it out and see what she thinks. When she's a bit older and can understand the kind of arguments behind it, or at least we can talk about it together. Question 4, Prune, a book that you recently got rid of or are planning to get rid of. Well, if you're interested in that, I just did a big book on haul video a few weeks ago, so I've included a link to that if you want to check that out. It was just a bunch of random stuff I had sitting around here forever. I don't tend to get rid of my books very often, so it's a rare occurrence. Question 5, Enchantment, a book that you had that had you under a spell, or like a book you could not put down. So that would be Under the Skin by Michel Faber. This book is intense, like how A Car Crash is intense. All his stuff, I've read his, a short story collection of his, some other books of his. They're all pretty dark and really heavy. His magnum opus, which is The Crimson Petal and the White, is extremely detailed historical fiction about a sex worker and one of her clients who is like this rich guy. It's really, really interesting. But anyway, I prefer this book though over all of them. If you happen to see the movie adaptation starring Scarlett Johansson, it came out a couple years ago. It's entirely different, and the ending of the movie is really goddamn annoying. Okay, I'm gonna do a rant here. Skip to this section here if you haven't read the book or you haven't read the movie or both and you're interested in it. I do recommend the movie. It's interesting, but I just don't. Anyway, here we go. So in the book, the main character is an alien kidnapping dudes on the highway. We eventually learn why she's doing this. We also don't realize she's an alien at first. You realize in the first at least 50 pages, and then you're like, oh, okay. So she's kind of like a poacher for humans, and the aliens that she's in league with, like her people, are taking the humans away to their world, presumably to eat them. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I actually read this book. But she's doing this job as kind of a penance, and despite her actions, you know, she's not a vilified character. You feel bad for her. The entire book is a complex, deep dive kind of metaphor into belonging, into what you will do to be part of a community. It's not meant to be taken extremely literally. In the movie, though, she's made out to be some kind of predatory femme fatale that leads men on by using her sexy bod. I mean, Scarlett Johansson, anybody would follow her into a dark alley, and then kills them for no reason. It's not explained. We're not really sure if she's an alien or what she is until the very end, when her character, who is not fleshed out at all because we don't understand her motives, is murdered by a rapist. The movie really, really reduces the scope and nuance of the books into something that is very mundane and very much like a Burn the Witch, almost like kind of not misogynistic, but like very reductive thing. The tone of the movie though is fantastic. There's a few haunting scenes that were very well done, and Scarlett does a fantastic job. But overall, the book, as usual, is 1,000 times better. I highly recommend you read the book. Trigger warnings: there is an attempted rape scene that's pretty bad. So there's that. It's not the lightest of novels. Anyway, I'm pretty sure my mom gave me this book. July 8th, 2005. Happy 20th birthday. Love, Mom. Thanks, Mom, for giving me this. It's very dark. Actually, I requested it, so it's not like she was like, Tina will like this. Anyway, question 6. Timekeepers. Name a series that has stood the test of time. Bonus points if it's a trilogy. Do I get double bonus points if it's 6 books? Because I'm going to talk about Proust. I don't have the books here because they're on my shelf. I'm too lazy to pick them all up. So I haven't posted a video in a while from my Proust Reflections playlist that you can check out if you want. It's basically just me reading like 100 pages at a time and then talking about nonsense. I mean, it's like the usual thing in my channel. I've been reading it since about February when I was part of a book club, and then it just kind of derailed because I got so many arcs and I got kind of annoyed at the narrator. So taking a bit of a break on old Marcel right now. But In Search of Lost Time, or The Remembrance of Things Past, has and likely, will stand the test of time. Time. I'm making a bunch of jokes and I'm not funny. So I'm third of the way into volume 5, so I really hope to finish it this year. We'll see. We'll see. I'm working on it, okay? Anyway, In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. Question 7. Asgard, a book with royalty or godlike figures. Hamlet, I guess. I'm not really big on royalty. It annoys me that my country still has the Queen as our figurehead, even though we're like not part of the Commonwealth anymore, I guess you could say. Whatever, it's symbolic. I guess I could have picked kind of most fantasy books for this, but I'm trying to list off different stuff. So we're going to talk about Hamlet. We're not going to talk about Hamlet. It's Hamlet. That's it. We're done. Question 8, Daggers, a book that cut you deep and made you emotional. That would be And They Didn't Die by Loretta Nagobo. I read this book in university and it still sits with me. This is a sad and frustrating and powerful novel about women in Africa during apartheid in the 50s to the 80s. And it follows one woman, what's her name again? Giselle, who, it's just really terrible how racism has impacted not just everybody, but specifically the women in these situations. This is a heartbreaking story. It's really, really good. If you can find a copy of this, I highly recommend it. this one was published by the City University of New York. So I think you'd have to order it probably from like a university library or like a university bookstore. But I mean, I don't know, Amazon might have it. Anyway, it's really good. You know, I'm going to read it to you. So this powerful political novel pays homage to the unsung heroism of rural women who opposed apartheid in South Africa. Set in the barren Sabelweni, Valley from the 1950s to the 1980s, And They Didn't Die, it follows a community of women who care for their children, the land, and the cattle through periods of drought and famine while their husbands labor in the distant mines and cities. The story centers around Giselle, whose struggles culminate in a dramatic act of redemption and revenge. And They Didn't Die forms a moving chronicle of resistance by women who, despite poverty and political persecution, rise up to fight for their land, their autonomy, and their children's future. It's really, really good. Anyway, yeah. And the last question, Illusion, a book you bought because you thought the cover was pretty, but it ended up being bad. I didn't buy this one, but the book is Captain Moxley and the Embers of the Empire, I think. I got it as an arc from NetGalley earlier this year, maybe it was early last year. And while I didn't think it was a bad book, it just wasn't to my liking. I think I have a review of it in one of my wrap-ups. But anyway, I just, the concept was really cool. I liked the main character. It just has a lot of like puzzle kind of stories. And I hate those aspects of video games, so the book just didn't work for me on that level. I think a lot of people would like it though. The cover is fantastic though. I mean, check it out. It's super cool. Okay, so that's the end of the questions. But because this tag is about Loki, I wanted to give my thoughts on the show. But before I get into that, if you're not sticking around, thank you to Eric for, making the tag and for tagging me. I tag anybody who's interested in doing it. If you want me to tag you in videos specifically, let me know in the comments and I will do so. I will tag anybody that wants to be tagged. I try to do like one tag video a month or every 6 weeks or something. Anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if you also have a copy of Jurassic Park that's beat up. Yeah, and so now I'm going to talk about Loki a bit. So, I absolutely love Loki. Marvel movies for me are like good movies to watch when I'm under the influence of a certain substance and they're fun and there's explosions. And my favorite Marvel movies, are Guardians and Thor Ragnarok, and I like Captain Marvel. All the ones with aliens in them. Wow, big surprise. Anyway, I think that Loki, though, is one of the best things that Marvel's put out in a while. I was never a huge Loki fangirl, though. Like, I always thought he was attractive, but he was never, like, my favorite. Like, there's some, it seems to be a lot of younger women, like, younger meaning, like, in their early 20s, that really love Loki for some reason. He's, like, 40, like, he's my age. Not like I'm 40. Yeah, I'm definitely not, like, a, Tom Hiddleston stan or whatever they say these days, those old, Anyway, this is turning into an onion on my belt story. Loki. So, I really like alternate timeline plots, so the premise and concept behind the show really worked for me. I really love the aesthetic of the show. It reminded me kind of like a Fallout. There's a very like faux 50s, almost 60s kind of styling to the place where the Timekeepers hang out. I love apocalypses, of course, so that part really, really worked for me. As soon as the first apocalypse showed up, I was like, is this an apocalyptic show? Anyway, as you know, because I mentioned before, I work for postapocalypmedia.com. I wrote an article about Loki. I'm going to include the link below. It was second to Screen Rant one day, so brag. I was very proud of that, but that's probably because I did really well in this SEO. Anyway, I really loved the show. I thought it was so much fun. I thought Owen Wilson did a great job. I really was sad that we didn't get to see him on a Sea-Doo at the end. I was kind of hoping that we would get like a little end clip of that. But I guess maybe next season. And Loki and Sylvie as a couple, oh my god, I shipped them so hard. As soon as she showed up, I was like, oh my god, I hope they get together. They better get together. I love this. I always am drawn to the concept of people fall in love with their clone or falling in love with like another version of themselves. I just think it's really interesting. I'm pretty sure it stems from my adornment of the show Aeon Flux, like not the Charlize Theron adaptation movie, but like the show with the really weird animation. Yeah, she like bangs her own clone a couple times in that show. Anyway, I think that's where that stems from. Anyway, I was like edge of my seat waiting for them to finally kiss when they were hanging out in that guy, the guy who remains, whatever his name is, when they were hanging out in his room and they were talking. I was like, will you just get together? You're driving me crazy. I am so glad the show didn't wimp out and make them friends or something. It's not weird. It's not that weird. I don't understand people saying it's weird or cringy or something. I'm like, nah, it's hot. She's probably not even a Loki, really. She's probably, I saw something somewhere where it said that she might be just the character who stole his powers on another timeline, but given it's Marvel, it's probably what it is. But whatever, let the Lokis get it on, please. Please do. I love the action scenes, and I have trouble deciding whether I like that post-apocalyptic void zone more than the moon, momentous one, blowing up. Gorgeous cinematography all around. Anyway, to wrap that all up, I loved the show, and I can't wait for season 2. And yeah, so if you also liked the show, if you also think that Loki and Sylvie are a great couple, let me know in the comments. If you think I'm weird for Loki and Sylvie, well, too bad, you're not going to change my mind. So yeah, thanks for watching.